The FBI contacted the researcher behind the voter integrity project that we covered last week. The project's findings reportedly show hundreds of thousands of potentially fraudulent ballots that he says could overturn election results in 3 states.
The data analyst and election integrity researcher behind the Voter Integrity Project, or VIP, says the FBI contacted him over the findings. He wrote, "The FBI has proactively and directly requested from me the VIP findings that indicates illegal ballots. By Tuesday, we will have delivered to the agency all of our data, including names, addresses, phone numbers, etc." Matt Brainerd is the former data and strategy director of President Trump's 2016 election campaign. Conservative nonprofit Thomas More Society's Amistad Project says it retained Brainerd to conduct the VIP work. The nonprofit stated that Brainerd was contacted by FBI Special Agent Young Oh of the FBI's Los Angeles field office. VIP evidence indicates that thousands of voters were disenfranchised as absentee ballots they said they returned weren't counted. It also found that thousands of people voted in states where they likely no longer lived. They had already completed a change of address request or had even registered in another state. Thousands more ballots were registered at non-residential addresses, despite the address being disguised to make it appear as though it was a residence. Brainerd noted that everything he passes on is always a copy. Speaking on the Epoch Times Crossroads program, Brainerd claimed the evidence is sufficient to overturn election results in 3 states.
Earlier today, members of Arizona's Republican state legislature held an election integrity hearing. The panel of lawmakers was joined by Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis from the Trump campaign. The hearing had witness testimony and questioning about allegations of widespread voter fraud. NTD's Christina Kim gives us the overview.
The hearing began at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Rudy Giuliani spoke first, saying that the legislature of Arizona has complete and absolute power to regulate the selection of electors in a presidential election.
Your political career is worth losing if you can save the right to vote in America. In fact, I may get you it. Because at times in our history, certain men and women have stepped forward and lost their political career to give us the rights that we have.
Giuliani added that the Supreme Court ruled that state houses and senates can reclaim the power to name electors. Ellis said when the voice of the people is corrupted through fraud, it is the duty and obligation of the legislature to prevent false results from being certified. But Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, a Democrat, said she has seen no evidence of irregularities or fraud that would overturn the results of the election. Matt Brainerd is the executive director of Look Ahead America and the former data chief and strategist for Trump for president. He spoke of his findings on early absentee votes from Maricopa County. He said 44% of people in this group never requested absentee ballots, but received one anyway. Brainerd said he will update his findings as the other counties in Arizona release their data. Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai spoke next. He holds 4 degrees from MIT, is a Fulbright scholar, and a world-renowned systems scientist, inventor, and engineer. Ayyadurai looked at the official data from Arizona Secretary of State and created a graph showing the cumulative votes for Biden and Trump. Using those results, he went through multiple computer simulations that used different combinations of vote allocations from different political parties that could reproduce what happened on election night. After many different combinations of votes, one scenario matched the actual curves on election night almost perfectly. In this scenario, Biden got 130% of votes from Democrats and Trump got negative 30% of votes from Democrats.
I find it highly implausible because this means that Mr. Biden got 130% of Democrat voters and negative 30%, and President Trump got negative 30%. So how?
Ayyadurai said there are some ways these results could have occurred. One is that there's a demographic within independent voters who voted for Biden that the model didn't account for. Another possibility is if Biden's votes were multiplied by 1.3, meaning each vote for Biden actually became 1.3 reported votes, and Trump's votes were reduced by 0.3 votes. He said a combination of these 2 things could have happened and noted he will continue to analyze the situation. Christina Kim, NTD News.
During the hearing, Arizona's Secretary of State Katie Hobbs certified the state's election results. She said every Arizona voter should know that they can stand proud that this election was conducted with transparency, accuracy, and fairness in accordance with Arizona's state laws and election procedures, despite numerous unfounded claims to the contrary. And a cybersecurity expert told the hearing that the Democratic Party of Pima County allegedly embedded 35,000 fake votes for every Democratic candidate. He previously testified at a Pennsylvania hearing.
Up these machines.
Cybersecurity expert and retired Army Colonel Phil Waldron testified in front of members of the Arizona State Legislature on Monday. Colonel Waldron presented an analysis of data that shows a vote spike on Election Day shortly after counting started.
Arizona was a little bit different. It had a pretty strong rise right up at the front, the first part of voting day, whereas the other states, and I can show you those, have a gradual increase in votes. But this injection spike at 8:06:40 p.m., and this is adjusted from Zulu time, so this is 143,100 votes that were injected. That was in excess of what the machines could have processed.
He presented an email sent on November 10th from an anonymous individual claiming to have witnessed a detailed plan to embed 35,000 fraud votes to each Democrat candidate's total votes while at a Pima County Democratic Party meeting in September. The source sent the email to the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice and all members of the Arizona legislature.
It says that please be advised that Pima County Recorder and the Democratic Party added fraud votes in the initial count to the vote by mail totals released at 8 p.m. on November 3rd, 2020. So this coincides with what we observed in the data analytics at that spike. We weren't aware of this until after the fact. So there were approximately 35,000 fraud votes added to each Democratic candidate's vote totals.
According to this individual, who appeared to be an IT specialist in Pima County, the 35,000 votes were embedded in a spread configured distribution and auto-adjusted to the real voter turnout. The fraud votes applied to both local and federal election candidates.
They were distributed based on the voter turnout carefully so they wouldn't look suspicious.
That's correct. They move the algorithms around to different precincts until they get the aggregate number that they want and need, and then they shift the algorithms to other precincts.
Did the Democratic candidates who got the benefit of those 35,000 false votes include Biden and Harris?
According to this email, it was all local and federal races.
So if that were true, then the result of the election is totally opposite the one that they're so anxious to certify.
Colonel Waldron clarified that he hopes this anonymous individual would come forward and issue it as an affidavit. But as of now, the state legislature has been unable to identify the individual. He added that this allegation can potentially be proven through a full forensic audit of the machines used in Pima County.
Congressman Paul Gosar, alongside Arizona lawmakers, gave us their reactions to the hearing. For one, Gosar says this is a bipartisan issue and every lawmaker should be on guard.
At a press conference during the Arizona election hearing, Republican Arizona Congressman Paul Gosar says this election issue should concern everyone.
This is not even a partisan issue. This is a bipartisan issue. In fact, one of my colleagues, a very liberal member from Maryland, Jamie Raskin, sits on government oversight, has actually introduced legislation because he was so concerned about the corruptibility in the 2016 election in regards to Russia. Bingo! So we ought to be doing this across the board for transparency to the American public.
Mark Fincham, a Republican Arizona state representative, says the problem is all about the chain of custody of ballots.
Cannot emphasize that enough. We do not have fraud countermeasures. We have people who have got too many fingers on those ballots. We have equipment that is made by a foreign country that is 100% corruptible. And we've got a duplicitous organization, that would be our elected officials, who are permitting the sequestration of that instead of showing transparency and say, you know what, you don't have to give us a subpoena, you don't have to impound the machines. Tell you what, Pick one, let's do a forensic audit. All I'm hearing is crickets, and that is unacceptable.
Sonny Borelli, an Arizona state Republican senator, pointed out how House Speaker Nancy Pelosi once said in 2017 that the election had been hijacked and hashtagged follow the facts. But now he says they want to shove the facts under the carpet. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
During the Arizona hearing, a cybersecurity expert told the panel the Department of Homeland Security analyzed their research on U.S. voting system vulnerabilities. He claims that after analyzing the data, DHS determined the software had multiple vulnerabilities back in August.
Phil Waldron, a cybersecurity expert and retired Army colonel who specialized in information warfare, testified at the Arizona public hearing before GOP legislators. Waldron said he shared his team's extensive research into U.S. voting systems vulnerabilities with local Texas DHS personnel months before the election. Some of the vulnerabilities include the machines being connected to the internet and malware.
When I started working on this project in August, I called them up and said, you guys have got to come out and look at it. They did. They spent an initial 3 hours going through this data. At the end of that, one of them said, I think I need to go outside and throw up.
He said that DHS personnel also had multiple follow-ups and received over 600 gigabytes of data that had been accumulated over time.
Our team provided them over 200 gigabytes of confirmatory data, and they analyzed that. After they analyzed, there was a passive scan done. They conducted a limited scan and determined that there were vulnerabilities. They held numerous meetings with their folks, the CISA cyber side, and the INA, which is the Intelligence Assessment Division.
He also claimed he was told by local DHS personnel that members of CISA's election division would not participate in the internal meetings or briefings about the material his team provided. One of the GOP legislators noted that Chris Krebs, the former director of CISA, stated that the 2020 election was the most secure in history.
He stated, we're not connected to the internet. He stated no votes leave this country. This is all things he's stated publicly.
So on the CISA website, correct?
Right. So are you willing to say under oath that you have seen the connection to the internet? You have seen it go offshore to Germany, Frankfurt. Are these things that you have personally seen and can say that is not true?
Our white hat hackers, yes, they have that traffic in the packets.
So why would he make that kind of comment, do you think?
Either not knowing, believing the myth, or not wanting the truth to be known.
When Krebs was director of CISA, the agency, along with other members of the Election Infrastructure Government Coordinating Council, released a joint statement declaring the election as the most secure in American history. It stated there is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised. The agency failed to mention that Dominion as well as Smartmatic are members of the council. Krebs was fired by President Trump earlier this month after the statement was released.
Retired General Michael Flynn has given his first public interview since being pardoned by President Trump. In the interview with WVW-TV, he said there is still a coup in progress against the president. Our reporter Kevin Hogan has more.
Former General Flynn told WVW-TV certain figures in the Democratic Party have upped their game in their efforts to remove Trump from office. Flynn told the news station he considers the election to be the greatest fraud that our country has ever experienced in our history. In reference to the Democratic Party leadership, Flynn said, "When they lost in 2016, I think that there was a decision to say, we're not going to allow this to happen again." He pointed to the heightened political divisiveness and the mainstream media's efforts to remove Trump during his presidency. Flynn said the establishment and the media went after him in any way possible. That includes psyops like the Russia probe, partisan impeachment effort by House Democrats, and politicizing the CCP virus pandemic. Now, Flynn claims since the Democrats didn't achieve what they wanted in 2016, America is seeing theft with mail-in ballots and Smartmatic software and Dominion systems. He said there is still a coup in progress against Trump. Flynn went further to say the ideological cousin of America's far-left political groups, the Chinese Communist Party, has interests in supporting such a coup. He suspects the CCP saw the ideological direction in which America was headed after the 2016 election and was not going to let Trump be re-elected. Yet Flynn says with hundreds of American patriots signing affidavits and with warriors on the legal battlefield like Rudy Giuliani and Lynn Wood, we're going to see the momentum change. Flynn believes that at the end of the day, we're going to find that Trump won by a massive landslide and that he'll be inaugurated come this January. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.